Trash mountain, lots of debt going into the sea. It's presidents, vomit, discounts on gasoline. It's all gonna be okay. It's all gonna be okay. Comment sections, bad directions, black, white, yellow, red, blue, and green. Man, woman, woman, trans, gay, none, all astray. It's all gonna be okay. 'Cause we are all the same.
Welcome to the 3% Podcast. This is Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and I'm joined as always by Tom Roberge from Riff Raff.
Hello, hello.
And I'm on a lot of cold medication, so people might want to adjust your podcast listening to like half speed, so that it will sound like normal instead of like hyped up Advil, cold and sinus, methamphetamine sort of speaking. But I'll try my best.
I'm really sorry that you're on so much medicine.
You're sorry, except that it is kind of a joy. Like the being sick part sucks. The medicine part is the fun part.
Can't really agree with you, but you know.
Advil, cold and sinus is my wonder drug.
All right.
I love it. But I had a frightening moment. Well, this episode is going to be pretty much just a bunch of little random things. But I do want to say I had a moment of pure panic this morning when I got an email, because we get on our new blog site, the new way that it's been redesigned. Anytime that someone makes a comment, now there's comments, first of all, and when they do, you get an email saying that you have to approve it so that you can prevent spam or like whatever trolls, of which there are none that come to our website. And I got a message saying that we had a comment from James Wood, the New Yorker reviewer, and I had a moment of serious panic that like he had read something that had said something mean about him or something that he didn't think was funny and was upset about it. And so I read his comment thinking with like pure dread, and it actually was not mean at all. He said that he was happy about the Dag Solstad piece that I wrote way back in the summer about 9 comp authors. And then references, because I made a joke that he's probably going to review the books anyways for the New Yorker and talk about Henry Green, and so I wasn't going to bother spending that much time trying to describe them. And he did just write a piece on Dag Solstad for the New Yorker, but it does not include Henry Green. But what's funny is that the thing that he's replying to, and the reason he found it, is that I had some great idea apparently of finding every review of Dag Solstad that existed, and every one of them had referenced a different author that they compared him to. So it ranked all 9 of the authors that Dag Solstad had been compared to, and James Wood is on here like 4 times because he compared him to a ton of different people, from Thomas Bernhard to Toni Morrison.
Interesting. Toni Morrison, huh? All right.
Yeah, it says, in Norway, Solstad is as celebrated as, say, Dad DeLillo or Toni Morrison.
Okay.
So my comment was like, sure, whatever. The best one is comparison number 7 is Pale Fire era Nabokov. Quote from Publishers Weekly: "The Pale Fire comparison is apparent, but this novel, written in 2006, is more digestible."
Interesting.
I love it. This is a good idea of mine. I sometimes I have good ideas for how to come up with dumbass like article framings, and then I try and write ones that are like things I mean, and no one cares. It's only these dumbass ones that are like, here's a weird way to frame something. Here's a different way of talking about books. Or like, why should we not treat authors like soccer players and sell and buy them? Like things that are like ridiculous. People are like, oh, that's cool. But if I try and write something serious, they're like, don't give a fuck. Do not give a fuck.
It is the world we live in.
Yeah, wait till Thursday's post, which is 9,000 words on why you can or cannot review certain books. So there'll be no one will read that.
All right. Should we get started? So before your medicine wears off?
It's never going to wear off, man. I'm just mainlining it. It's like an IV. Yeah, so we wanted to start because we've been talking a lot about bookstores and bookstore financial issues. And there's an article in Electric Lit from Aaron Bartnett called "Why Buying Books Will Not Save Our Beloved Bookstores." You read this in full. I skimmed it.
You're giving me a lot of credit here. It's basically Aaron summarizing a series of like a Twitter storm seems like a bit much, but a thread from Lexi Beach, who is a former publishing, I don't know what she did exactly, marketing and publicity, I think, employee who then opened a Books for Queens. Mm-hmm. And this follows on the heels of the news that McNally Jackson, the store in Soho on Prince Street, will be moving from that Prince Street location after June of next summer.
Right.
Because their lease is up. They had signed an initial 10-year lease back in 2005. There was obviously like a nice sweetheart deal. That was back when the neighborhood was not what it is now, let's say. And then I think she signed a new lease in whatever that would have been.
No, it was a 15-year lease.
It was a 15-year lease. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was 2 leases. Anyway, so now that deal is up, her rent is going to skyrocket, and they're going to be forced to move. And so Lexi sort of summarizes in a tweet thread sort of why this is happening, why even a store as successful as McNally Jackson in Soho has to relocate to somewhere cheaper. And I mean, this is the essential thing, which is oddly, I had heard somebody make a comment about this just days before, which is, bookstore loving friends, here is the truth. At a certain point, buying books from the store you love is not going to be enough to keep it open. I promise you there is no volume of business that McNally Jackson could have feasibly been doing such that when the initial sweet deal of a 15-year lease expired, they'd magically be able to pay market rent in that neighborhood. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
Like, in those 15 years that the store has been there, the neighborhood has totally turned around and commercial real estate has skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the thin margins that bookstores have, even if you're doing incredible volume like McNally Jackson, even if you're selling a lot of things that aren't books in order to help supplement that, and they don't do a ton in that store in terms of, fancy pens and notebooks and all that sort of stuff. Even if you're doing all of that as well as selling a lot of books, it's hard to stay and be able to afford rent for something like a bookstore, just because the profit margin doesn't work the same way.
Do you remember Jeanette Watson's second store? Like, she owned Books and Company, which went out of business like back in the 1990s. And then she opened another store called Lenox Hill Bookshop in Lenox Hill on would it have been like Madison and 68th, something like that, Park and 68th. And they were open, I think, for 5 years, and I think it was a 5-year lease. And at the end of that, their lease tripled, and so they just closed immediately. And they had been doing really well, quite well at that time. And it's the same situation. Much smaller store though, even.
Yeah, it was tiny compared to McNally Jackson.
Which let me add one other minor drug field digression. Is there, aside from Powell's in Portland, is there any store that's as like magnificent in terms of size and sort of like approach and display as McNally?
I mean, the Strand, but
the Strand, I don't think their display or their approach is as cool. They're just overwhelming.
I mean, you could make that argument, certainly.
I know Schuler, when I used to work there, was, but I think that their stock depleted quite a bit because of changes in where people shopped, and that their other stores, not the flagship store that I worked at, the other stores are more well stocked now, but I don't know if they look the same. But most of the stores are like, fairly modest, fairly general. Like, they don't look super different from one another. Seminary Co-op used to be, but I haven't been to their new store. But McNally Jackson had like that special appeal of being like a gigantic New York bookstore. Upstairs, the downstairs, the things are displayed cleanly. Everything's like very well branded. I mean, it's just that was a well put together, designed space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I haven't even been to the Williamsburg store, but I assume it's the same thing. And I mean, the cost to do that is substantial. And so to have to walk away from the store on Prince Street, do it again somewhere else in the neighborhood. I mean, I assume she'll be able to get the money to do it, but man, that's rough,
Really is.
Redo that every 10 years, 15 years?
Yeah. I guess it's kind of like moving.
Yeah, I guess.
Remember when Coliseum moved? And they were like, they had amazing store right at the end, right by the Diamond District, and that was super cool. And then they moved into the middle of the street, and it was like took them like a year, I think, to move, and then it just folded almost immediately thereafter. Same thing with Gotham. Gotham Book Mart had that same problem. Their theirs is more complicated because I believe they chose to sell their space, and then didn't buy a new location. They rented, and like everything went awry after that.
Right.
But both of those went through. Those movings ended them.
Yeah, and that was part of what contributed to the death of oh God, I'm blanking on the name of it. The one in the East Village. It's like all these
Oh,
little
Shakespeare? No, no. Oh my
totally.
God, so famous on 8th St. Mark's.
St. Mark's, where they couldn't afford the one location, so they tried to move, and like the process of moving obviously takes away sales because you have to close for some days, and it's confusing to customers and all of that, and yeah, it just did them in finally.
So Lexi makes some recommendations of how to alter this pattern. Why don't you evaluate these on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of 10 being the most effective, 1 being the least effective?
All right, so she begins with
Start it. I'll say you're an owner. You get to have a more of a valued opinion on this. Start at the grassroots level. Call your local officials. Write letters. Go to town hall meetings. Speak up about the value of this. It should be institution or these institutions in your community.
right,
Typo, electric lit, typo.
right, which is weird because it's literally right below it.
Yeah.
Right there. Here's the problem.
Scale 1 to 10 first, and then you can break it down.
If can I ask, are we judging this based on strictly the keeping the rent affordable thing?
Yes, the effectiveness of keeping bookstores rent affordable enough that they can survive.
Okay, on this one, call your local officials. This is maybe a 6.
Okay. So
But
not a waste of time.
This is nothing is going to be higher than this one. That's what I will say. Here's the thing. The people that you rent from are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And unless we're talking about multi-million-dollar companies that, are headquartered in the Middle East or something like that, which a lot of New York has now become, outside of New York, most of your landlords, even if they don't live for our example, our landlords literally live around the corner from me. Our business landlords live around the corner from me, and also, own residential properties in my neighborhood where we live. They go to the town hall meetings. I see them at everything where there's an elected official sort of gathering. They're doing the same thing. For a lot of reasons, they're going to be on your side in terms of, look, they want to keep their interests as opposed to like the interest of a multi-million-dollar corporation that wants to move in and do business in their building. Because they actually do want businesses like ours to thrive more than they want to put in a fucking Urban Outfitters, right? That said, if no local business like mine survived, they would go and turn to the Urban Outfitters because they want to make their money. If they have their preference, yes, they'd like it to be a small, independently owned local business. It's just, in the end, they're still going to prefer to get paid and not get paid.
What would so you can convince local officials that having local businesses are a positive. That
Yes.
seems like doable.
Yeah,
But does that change how much the landlord is going to charge you in rent for a property that they own?
No, and
Okay.
that's the thing. I don't see how that's going to do anything. Like, our local officials are not going to go to our landlord and say, "Hey, cut these people a break."
What about the government giving like tax incentives to bookstores or some sort of category? It couldn't be just bookstores, I assume, but some sort of category like that.
I think this is another of her suggestions.
I don't think it is. I think it came from someone else.
Oh, really? But it's a sort of tied to this, right? Which is that, she says here, my idea is that landlords who rent to locally independent businesses should get a real estate tax break.
Oh, there you go. There it is. There.
So that I think, it does tie to this, right? But
yeah.
I think that's possible. I don't know how legal that is.
You can do anything.
I guess you can, but...
Dude, we have a super ass corrupt government here in Rochester that does a lot of things that are pretty sketchy.
I mean, it would have to be a pretty. So, okay, I know that in Providence, there is a
Also corrupt.
Yeah, well,
Not as bad anymore.
not as bad. There is a what they call a resident landlord tax break for people who own. We have a lot of old Victorian houses here that have been broken up into three-family condo buildings, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you own one of these buildings and you live in one of the units in the building, you get a significant tax break.
Oh, I have a feeling that's similar here too.
But I don't know what the model like that would be for commercial.
Well, I mean, they offer for like downtown developments and things like that, they'll offer tax breaks to people willing to move into areas of the city that are being renovated or they're trying to revitalize in various ways. I think they can do that across the board with like minimal voting necessary. This is probably getting out of my depth, but from what I remember from talking to someone a few years ago about downtown Rochester, they're like the city council can say, for this area, we can offer a tax break on these properties or whatever to businesses willing to move into this area, and that it was like a feasible thing.
That makes sense to a certain extent, but I mean the problem is not necessarily the first lease. It's like if a bookstore is helping to revitalize a neighborhood, what happens in 10 years?
Yep, and that's when if you owned the building and you were making say $25,000 a year and you could be making $75,000 a year, at what point is that going to outweigh your like generosity towards the idea of having people reading books in your neighborhood?
Exactly. And right, I mean these are realistic numbers, right? Like it go from 25 to 75,000.
Absolutely. And for most people who own properties like that, that then becomes their inheritance and their retirement. And that if you can do things for 10 years at that level, and then you're like 70 and you're like, I want to have a bunch of money to leave my kids and I want to live okay for the rest of my life. I could give this to Urban Outfitters and make 3 times as much money for the next 5 years.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, look, the building we are housed in is a massive former plant with, that was bought, I think, around 10, 12 years ago and totally refurbished, rehabbed to be turned into commercial and residential units. It might be taking them until now to be making their money back.
Yeah.
Like that's a significant investment. And so, of course, they're trying to make some money off of this after they sunk so much into it to get the doors open. Now they want to start making money. I mean, look, there's in a city like Providence, there's not everything is in high demand. There are always units open, right? And so they're trying to balance what they should be getting for the unit in terms of recouping their cost versus what the market is willing to pay for rents and those sort of things. And, it's a fine line that they have to play with constantly, but they do need to make their money back, right? I mean, we didn't invest millions of dollars to buy this building and rehab it. I mean, we do have to pay for what we're getting. Mm-hmm. And it's just a matter of if it's fair. And then 10 years from now, if we've helped revitalize the neighborhood, what sort of credit should we get for helping do that financially? Or what should our landlords get from the city financially in that? And I think a tax break is not a horrible model. I just don't know how. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't see that it's going to work very often in very many places beyond what you're talking about, which is like rehabbing like decimated sort of neighborhoods.
Yeah, unless there's some sort of like public funding for certain sort of enterprises like the French model, which like the rent could be slightly higher, but it's subsidized by a government. Also worth noting, she's talking too about everyone, readers and bookstore aficionados and customers being involved in this and not just the owners and the landlords. Just to clarify that she's encouraging everyone to go complain, because if you get enough public action about something, maybe the guilt factor weighs in there for the landlord, and they're like, yeah, fine, fuck it. I don't want to piss off everyone.
You might even get, somebody on the city council or state level representative or something who might run on this platform, which, even if they don't, if that's not their signature sort of bill that they put in place when they get elected, if it's something that they are constantly aware of and constantly sort of trying to support in their legislature, as opposed to like, courting Amazon to build their headquarters, and if enough people locally, like in Rhode Island at least, like, something like that would get a lot of support as opposed to the Amazon coming in, then it can slowly turn the tide. Public support definitely has a huge impact on these things. The other thing I will say is that if these things happen, they need to be like very obvious. I think they're more effective when the city makes like a real push for these kinds of things, as opposed to it just being like, if you know that this deal or this tax credit is out there, then you can get it. They need to like really do their work to like make it an active policy, an active way of recruiting businesses and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it can't just be some like quiet little, nice little bonus at the end of the year. It needs to really be something that everybody knows about and knows how to access and play a part in.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the next one. Invite small business owners for panel discussion on community at commercial real estate conferences. Imagine the dialogue between bookstore owners and commercial real estate developers at a conference feels like fodder for a scathing short story, but it might also initiate an important conversation we don't know how to start.
This is like a 1.
That's a 1 to me too. I got nothing.
Well, this is not happening. They certainly don't care.
I 100% don't think that conferences are, I don't know, I shouldn't say that. I don't think that conferences of this sort would alter like public policy.
Oh God, no. These people are commercial real estate investors.
Yeah.
That's their job.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
It's better for them if like the tenants, i.e. me, like stay in business, but come on, like they don't give a shit. They just.
So here's the last one. PhDs in urban studies looking for a project. We need you. I almost want to get a PhD in urban studies just to start this project. Okay, this needs more description. Okay, this is from Lexi. Maybe some PhD candidate in urban studies wants to write a thesis on the inherent conflicts between a business model that aims for sustainable steady growth, small biz retail, versus one that aims for maximizing return on investment, real estate, or a parity study of leases to national chains versus locally owned shops. That would be so interesting. I feel like that exists, so I'm going to say this is a 3.
Yeah, it definitely probably already exists.
I'm pretty sure you could find this without that. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have jumped in on your number. I don't know what number you'd give it, but that's my guess is that you could probably find a lot of this information in various studies, but it's just like, it doesn't alter things. It's just descriptive. Most things like that are descriptive. Or it doesn't change things in the sense that like there's all those studies and reports from like the problems of building stadiums and how communities get fleeced by stadium proposals, and yet it happens constantly with all that information right there, including in Boston, where the guy who wrote the fundamental study explaining how the tax scams worked and how damaging it is to the community helped move the Pawtucket Red Sox back out of Pawtucket and build a stadium. So like even within someone who's like on one side, flip-flop to the other when, the money's suited.
Right. To be clear, the Paw Sox moved to Worcester, not Boston. So.
Whatever. Same difference.
It's super not. But anyway.
both places I don't like. Can I offend everyone in both of those suburbs or cities or whatever they are?
Pawtucket is our neighbor to the north. I've been to many Paw Sox games. It's a very old stadium, and they did need a new one. But luckily, the Rhode Island voters were like, "Fuck this, we are not paying for it." So that's why they ended up moving. But yeah, that guy's a shitbag. Anyway, yeah, I don't know this, do studies thing. Like, I think it's important that studies like this happen. And I will say, like, I know some of the commercial real estate developers in Providence, including one that we've dealt with a little bit. Come from a school, like literally wherever they went to school on like urban planning or whatever, do read studies like this and do think of these things, right? Mm-hmm. And they do think that way when they're trying to populate commercial real estate. That said, spot stays open too long, you got to take some money somewhere. And that's, you're constantly going back and forth between exactly what she points out here, like national chains versus Leon's. Like it's just a constant battle. And I don't know if there's any way to fix it. I don't know if it can be fixed in the model that is a capitalist version of commercial real estate. And we just have to live with it, unfortunately, and hope that we find sympathetic sort of city councils that support local businesses as opposed to national ones. And then same with the real estate people.
Yeah. So here's a question for you because of the national chain thing. So after whatever, the CEO got fired from Barnes and Noble, and then there was a bunch of like he's suing them for unlawful termination or whatever, and that came out in there that there had been an attempt to buy Barnes and Noble last year, and there was another. So since that came out, it's been floated that Barnes and Noble is courting suitors or willing to listen to offers for their chain. So just in relation to national retail, in 2019, Barnes and Noble will be sold. Yes or no?
Yes.
Interesting. To who?
No idea. Probably that. What's the name of the British one? Waterstones?
Ooh, I'm saying Indigo, the Canadian one.
Canadian. Don't you think that Canadians would be smarter?
They were the ones that proposed that they were the ones who were looking into it before, but they're very successful right now. Indigo is, and they have whatever is working for them is working. So they have shown some indication that they would like to get into the U.S. market. So this would be one massive way to do it.
I guess. So they would just rebrand everything?
I assume so, and change like the entire internal infrastructure, because let's just say Barnes & Noble is probably bloated and not effectual as a company. Like, just guessing here. Like, by having been in their stores.
I don't know that you need to guess to make that assessment. But.
Just don't want to insult everyone who works at Barnes & Noble, like, fully. But yeah, there's another thing. Can I put a moratorium on the "make our blank again" statements? Like so her thing ends with "make our neighborhoods vibrant again," and in Publishers Weekly this week there was a "make metadata important again." Like, can we just stop this now?
Right. I mean, it's gross. We should all stop using. You know what bothers me? And this is totally unrelated to anything.
Okay.
But. Okay, we all remember the Got Milk fucking advertising campaign from, I don't know, 30 years ago?
Oh, God, please don't say it was that long.
You could look it up. Probably right. But, like, I walked by a car yesterday in a parking lot that said, like, got Shih Tzus, and it's like, we can't just use the word got with everything. We can't. I need this to stop. It needs to end.
Oh, boy. Yep. Not very inventive. So there's moving on to other topics. The top 10 books that are leading the pack for the Great American Read. We talked about the Great American Read, the PBS program, whereby they were doing a thing about books that were great and American or Americans read, or I'm not entirely clear. And they had a list of 100, and then Americans could vote, or I guess anyone could vote. I don't know if you have to be American to vote. You could probably find a way around that. Because the voting is online and through social hashtags, it probably doesn't matter. But to vote on which of the 100 books is the best America's best loved novel, which it doesn't make any sense. But anyways, so they've had more than 3.8 million votes, which is insane, and the voting ends on Thursday. So you're probably listening to this on Wednesday. You could still go in and vote, but don't, because this is dumb. And here are the top 10 books in alphabetical order at this moment in time: Charlotte's Web, Chronicle of Narnia series, see, not a book, series, Gone with the Wind, which is racist, Harry Potter series, Jane Eyre, Little Women, the Lord of the Rings series, Outlanders series, which I still maintain involves people riding dragons, but apparently it's not true, Pride and Prejudice, and To Kill a Mockingbird. These, as you pointed out, these are all books for high schoolers.
Yeah, these are, yes, some of them for actual children. Let's be clear. Not beyond high school, but for children.
Charlotte's Web is
for children.
100% for children. My kids are too old to read Charlotte's Web.
Yeah. No, you read that in like second grade.
Yeah, and you watch the fucking Disney movie with the spider and shit. People cry, I think. I don't remember.
Cry. I don't really have anything to say about this.
This is dumb. I'm surprised that the Fountainhead isn't winning at all. I don't even know if it was one of the 100, but like that usually seems to win anytime that there's voting because of the I don't know, the Ayn Randians and or right wing and or whomever. They all tend to like vote for that en masse and probably rig it somehow, but it's not on here, so that's a plus.
I'm reading on this blog post from PBS that talks about these 10 books or whatever.
Uh-huh.
On the right it talks about the last episode, and there's not really a description so much as the title is Other Worlds, and then it says highlighted books include Atlas Shrugged.
There we go.
Dune, Chronicles of Narnia, Foundation, Gulliver's Travel, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Lord of the Rings, Lonesome Dove, Martian, and The Outlander. How did Lonesome Dove and Atlas Shrugged fit into this?
Atlas Shrugged because Atlas Shrugged is an alternative reality in which objectivism becomes the dominant force of all society. By which I mean it's 2018, or if Reagan were in office for an extra 4 years. I don't know. Yeah, that's weird.
It's not sci-fi.
No, it's definitely not. I mean,
And Lonesome Dove is a Western.
It's another world. The West was another world, I guess.
But, I mean, it was our world just a long time ago.
Just before that was written.
Oh, man. Anyway.
The Atlas Shrugged is a world in which architecture is really important.
Right. Anyway.
So
right.
Frankfurt took place.
Yeah, let's move on from this fucking great American.
Frankfurt took place, and there's a few articles about it. One that said everything was business as usual. Then there's one on self-censorship, which has one statement. So there's one in publishing perspectives. I was trying to find Frankfurt articles of interest, and most of them are just pretty much like sort of recaps. There's all the like fretting over like what's the big book and whatever, who cares. And this one was from publishing perspectives was a panel on self-censorship. A panel on self-censorship and morality in publishing today, and it has a bunch of stuff about self-censorship, including this great story of I don't want to pronounce this wrong. So Fabrice Piault, editor-in-chief of Livre Hebdo, am I saying it close?
You're very close. Yeah,
said that self-censorship was growing in France because of pressure from lobbies and networks. He cited a recent example, and this is amazing: a pornographic graphic novel called Petit Paul with a well-endowed 10-year-old boy. Quote, the book has the image covered and a for adult sticker too, but there's an online petition and a number of book chains removed the title from sale. Then, and this is the one I want to ask you about, he said there was more and more pressure like this, such as the opposition to Gallimard publishing Céline's essays because of the author's anti-Semitic views. Quote, even though it was to be published with explanatory notes. What's your take on that? Because I know you're a Céline fan, and so am I, but not of this. And I've read parts of like his, because some of the stuff has come out before in English. Not like there's a book that's like a much more anti-Semitic book that I don't think was ever translated into English, or that has like the sort of like eugenics-ish sort of bent to it. But I think there's other things that have sort of his leanings to that, 'cause he was mostly in that camp of like racial profiling. So what's your take?
I mean, look, if I'm, making the calls for this kind of thing at New Directions, I'm not publishing this. Let's put it that way.
We passed on it at Delkey twice.
So there you go. Does it mean, I don't know. I don't know what other essays are in here. I guess that's, or why they need to include some anti-Semitic pieces.
I think that I don't want to say anything because there's again expert out there who knows this, but I think the book that I sort of remember was that there were like three like mid-length essays that added up to like shortish book, like 150 pages or so, and they all were written at the time like pre-World War II and like had other points, but that was included within them. But there's also like I don't remember if I talked about this on the last one, but I finished the part of my struggle about him reading Mein Kampf, which is I'm gonna try and write about next week, but which is crazy because like I would never have read any part of Mein Kampf before this book, and now I have through this book. But there's a lot of stuff in there about how a lot of Hitler's stuff came from American researchers who were talking about the racial differences or differences between races in terms of intelligence and abilities and whatever else, and that was most of where all that stuff was being cited. and that was a lot of it. And then it goes to like the next extreme clearly. And the few bits that are quoted in my struggle from that are pretty fucking out there. But the part that was really fascinating that I do want to write about, and I don't want to give away too much of it, is about Hitler's view on propaganda. And the Mein Kampf stuff from propaganda is crazy. But like I would never have read that. That book's still around, obviously, and available, and it's also uber disturbing for any number of reasons. But it came to mind when I saw this.
I mean, I don't personally believe that anything shouldn't be able to be said or published, right? I mean, that is what freedom of press and freedom of speech means. But publishers have the right to say, no, I don't want to publish this because, one, it makes them look bad, because, one, they don't want to make, two, they don't want to make money off of it, they don't want to be associated with it. All of these are perfectly good reasons to not do it. And if you call that self-censorship, then that's fine. I mean, we all practice some form of self-censorship on a daily basis. You know, when somebody orders a drink that I think is going to taste disgusting, I don't tell them that. I maybe politely try to sway their opinion, but like, you can't just tell somebody you're an idiot because, you know, you disagree with what they want. That's a form of self-censorship, right?
Isn't this one being more like not the self-censorship, that Gallimard was publishing the book and got a lot of online criticism against them having published it,
right?
Even or planning on publishing it with like the explanatory notes. Because I don't know. I'm gonna make this up. Who cares? I'm on enough drugs to make shit up. I might just be hallucinating from fever right now. But isn't the publication of Mein Kampf? Don't all the proceeds from that go to a charity or something?
I have no idea about that. I don't even know. Wouldn't it be in public domain at this point?
I assume so, but I feel like someone some years ago was like, we're issuing it under like a historical guise or like for historical reasons. But any sales, like the money will not go to benefit anyone. It will go directly to like the Jewish Defense Fund or something of that nature. But I might be completely hallucinating that. But I mean, I suppose there's ways that a publisher could get around that. But this is one of the like that they don't want it published for good reason. Like people saying you shouldn't publish Céline's anti-Semitic essays makes sense. But it's interesting that it just popped up there. I was curious what your take would be.
My take is that these people have every right to voice their opinion, but they should not expect Gallimard to bend to public will.
Fair.
I mean, you know what I mean? Each party has their own right to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's and I would not chide Gallimard for going ahead with publication personally, nor would I be upset at these people who voice their opinion and say, hey, this shouldn't be out there. Like, I understand both sides. Personally, I wouldn't get involved. It's a problem with like the slippery slope, right? Like, yep. I don't believe you should be able to say, hey, you shouldn't publish this. Well, then you don't publish that, and then you don't publish another thing, and it's, you know, suddenly we're censoring everything, right? So
yeah, it's sort of like the Milo, whatever the fuck his name was, situation. Right.
Yeah, you know, it's what the ACLU believes in. You know, it's like you may not agree with neo-Nazis, but they have every right to gather and spew their vile nonsense in public. They do.
Speaking of Nazis, this is becoming a trope. The one of the blogs about Frankfurt is from Katie Derbyshire, a translator from German, does a lot of work for Seagull Books, but has translated a lot of other things as well. And she wrote her like recap of being at the Frankfurt Book Fair and how everyone's complaining there aren't enough parties, but there's plenty of parties and blah, 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 blah. She goes on with that, and then she comes to this part that I was just, I guess, blissfully unaware that this existed. I'll just read her 2 paragraphs, I guess. Here comes the shit part. Nazis. Last year there was a lot of stress around events organized by extreme right-wing publishers, featuring extremist writers and politicians and rightly eliciting protests. This year, the book fair placed all the dodgy publishers in one remote corner, except one of them pulled off a scam, pretending to wind up their press and then registering for a stand under a different name, claiming they'd be presenting books about freedom of speech. They ended up in the midst of left-leaning indies, rubbing their hands in delight. To be honest, that felt like the kind of elaborate and childish provocation my sister used to practice on me when we were 8 and 10, so like most other people, I followed my mom's advice and ignored them. But on Friday, the AFDs, I don't know what that is, Björn Haka was slated to promote his hate-filled book, How I Will Whittle Down Germany's Population to Keep Only the Strong and the Blonde, not the actual title. This year, the fair put him in a separate room and restricted access, blocking off escalators for much of the afternoon and calling in a significant police presence. Plainclothes police officers threatened protesters and were generally more heavy-handed than one would expect at a publishing industry event. Writer Sophie Sumbarde was ejected from the premises for no explicable reason. Inside the promotion itself, a book fair representative ended up reassuring reporters that they were, of course, within their right to record the proceedings, never mind what the organizers said, but television cameras were not allowed access. To be honest, the less airtime devoted to platforming Bjorn Haka's hateful ideas, the better, but the principle of excluding parts of the press is wrong. If the book fair is serious about promoting human rights, it will do well to rethink hosting individuals known for propagating racism and belittling genocide. Things are better this year, I believe, with no reports of violence, but the book fair must be a safe place for all those who attend, and hosting Nazis makes it a dangerous place for many of us. I had no idea that was happening or had happened. That's fucking crazy.
It is crazy, and it's shocking. One, that it's taking place in Germany.
Yeah.
Two, this oddly speaks to like the power of publishing in Europe in a way that it doesn't exist in the US. No neo-Nazi, the Proud Boys are not going to try to get a booth at BEA.
No.
They would not even give a fuck.
No.
It makes no sense for them, right? It's kind of amazing that, publishing still matters so much in Germany.
You know who would, though, is like one of those amazing like QAnon like conspiracy theory book writers. They could get a self-published booth at BA and they'd be way into it.
Right, but that would be like...
That's a little different.
It's a little different, yeah.
It's not trying to incite violence or like racial purity or like genocide or anything like that. It's just some crazy-ass person who is really into Q.
Right. And a lot of conspiracy theories.
I think Marlins Man is part of QAnon. I think when he was signaling that he kept switching his visor during the baseball game, the Brewers-Dodgers game in Milwaukee, he kept switching his visor around all game. I think those are signals, and if you counted them up, they added up to Q. Just gonna put that out there.
No one listening has any idea what you're talking about right now.
Hey, we just got the whole Reddit crowd, man. They just came swarming to this podcast. If I put QAnon plus Nazis as the title of this, like we're gonna have a new group of listeners.
But
I won't.
No,
I will not.
So no one knows who Marlins Man is.
Oh, yes, they do. There are listeners to this who know who Marlins Man is.
All right.
There's no way they don't. And if they don't, you can look it up. He's best friends with Front Seat Amy. You can also look her up.
Before we move on from this censorship sort of stuff, I think it's interesting. There's a little bit in here about the Indian representative says we have a conservative government and big publishers have decided to side with them, so they are not progressive, which sort of leads into Dominique Rocca, I'm going to say, CEO of U.S. publisher Sourcebooks, who is extremely enthusiastic about teens in YA publishing. She says, this area is driving change. I think adult publishing lives in a ghetto.
Typo.
YA is the most forward part of the U.S. market. Young people are curious. They want to explore themselves and explore the world. We've just had Banned Books Week in the U.S., and the most stolen book in the U.S. is This Book is Gay. Teenagers are exploring, and we need to help them. Okay. I have so many questions about this.
Okay.
So many, because I don't think she's wrong in her like essential sort of thesis in that teens are far more progressive and forward thinking and open to diversity in a way than adults are. Or this generation of young people has been more open than in a long time. That's a good thing, certainly. Yeah. But one, adult publishing does not live in a ghetto. Two, how do you measure the most stolen book in America? What does that have to do with banned books? I'm so confused by these things.
Yeah, is This Book is Gay, is that banned places? But would that have... Yeah, you're right, because even if it was banned, that doesn't mean it's not for sale. It doesn't need to be stolen.
She just threw a bunch of stuff at the wall and thought it might stick. But I don't know. Look.
Has this book been... This Book is Gay, has that been stolen from your store yet?
We don't really have YA, so...
You need to put that out there. Let people steal it. We had, oddly enough, the last bookstore that was in Rochester, was called Village Green. Was the last independent chain. It was an independent chain, but had like 3 or 4 stores. But they closed down some time ago. And the woman and guy, the couple who ran it, I'm friends with, and they used to tell stories about this guy who came out because they had a gay section in their store back in the 1990s, and this person would come and like read the books and steal books from that section, and like ended up working at the bookstore as a result, and like they helped change that person's life. So go bookstores and go stealing gay books.
There's a lot. Okay, I just like this person. I mean, look, I'm going to disparage anyone who works at Source Books. I'm really sorry, but she never fucking heard of Haymarket, City Lights. Like, it isn't. Adult publishing is not the closed off, non-thinking ghetto that she's making it out to be. I think that's really unfair.
Oh man, who thought we'd be defending adult publishing as a whole?
I mean, I'm not going to defend the big houses, but
no, they're not necessarily not. I don't know if I would think of. I think that they're not forward thinking in some ways of like the way that they sort of tokenize and fetishize certain publishing initiatives. But I mean, it's not like people in corporate publishing are like wicked conservative.
No, not at all. I mean, they do all live in New York.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women in positions of power, like it's a pretty progressive field,
Yeah. It's pretty open. Like there's not a lot of, I don't think that there's a lot of like prejudice and hatreds within publishing industry folks.
No, there's some hesitancy there had been, I will say, some hesitancy to really, really get behind authors of color until the last decade or so, but it's changing, definitely.
Absolutely.
I think it changes every year. I mean, the lists we see every season get more and more diverse. Absolutely. Even from the big houses.
Right. So speaking of theft, there's this crazy article about a phishing scam seeking manuscripts spreading worldwide, of which tell me if I've got this right. So someone is imitating agents and emailing other agents, or imitating scouts and emailing other agents for manuscripts, which then they get, and then they make them ebooks and sell them?
Right, but they also, a key part of this was that they sell them through a website that is meant to mimic a real bookstore's brick and mortar store's website.
Right. The fuck is going on here?
I mean, I said this to you before we started recording. It's hard to believe they would make any money at this.
Yeah, and there's my favorite part is, so I don't get it entirely, but my favorite part is this. It's from Gray 10 of the Greyhawk Agency. It was eerie that as they obviously, he said he's had requests from fake Greek and Israeli publishers and UK scouts asking for materials. It was eerie as they obviously had inside knowledge, said Tan. They even asked for the story collection and an upcoming novel of a not-so-famous Chinese writer that I represent, and I did not even know about the upcoming collection or novel. So someone's got some insider info and is like selling this to someone who's then, or selling or giving it to someone who's then using that insider info to get manuscripts so that they can sell them before these books are ever published.
Here's the thing. It's not that they're like selling information. They have access to these people's emails. That's what's happening.
Oh, but they're not hacking their email. They're just pretending to be these people.
You don't think they've also hacked their email?
No.
How else would they have this information?
I think some scout is like selling information to some sketchy people. I think there's a deep throat. This is the all conspiracy podcast. There's someone who's friends with all these. I'm friends with all these people that are listed here. Like if they mention to me a bunch of like, oh, this person, blah, 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 I could go tell some other person who's like, not ethical, and they could just fake an email and get that information and then sell it. You're friends with these same people. All of these people. We all do.
But again, how is this profitable?
It's not. It cannot be profitable.
Unless you're having robots do everything, which we just established is not possible because there's got to be a human element and you have to pay someone for like leads or whatever. This is not profitable.
I don't understand how you'd be getting like Turkish books and Israeli books and those aren't going to be selling a lot of copies on ebooks.
Right. You're not getting the manuscript to Stephen King's new novel,
No.
right? That no one just casually emails that on over.
Like, hey, here you go. No problem.
Sure, no problem.
Whatever you want. Unpublished David Foster Wallace essays. Here you go.
Yeah.
Whoops. Didn't
Anyway,
realize. It's a very weird story. It's just a very weird story.
Yes, but yet again, if it is profitable, sort of heartening that publishing still matters.
That publishing still matters and has like renegade, bizarre black market elements to it.
I will say this is vindicating a lot of when I was working at Penguin, especially way back when ebooks were still like a new thing. We got so many emails from authors like, I don't want my books in email. I don't want them in electronic form. They're going to get stolen and pirated and sold en masse. Yep. And I'm thinking, we sell like 100 copies of your book a year. Like no one is going to find it worthwhile to put your book on the black market. I'm sorry.
I was super excited the first time I found one of our books on a black market. I was like, fuck yeah, we made it.
Exactly.
Someone's trying to steal this. That's important. It's like, I mean, it was like, and this, I don't even know if this is controversial anymore. I used to always have to write for Publishing Perspectives or for PW about like the copyright meetings that they'd have at Frankfurt or the London Book Fair or wherever. And I hated them. Like I loathed writing about them, and I'd do anything in my power to like try and say something interesting and usually semi-controversial about these copyright things. Cause they'd always get up and be like, you know, our dictionary, there was 200,000 illegal downloads of this dictionary that cost $100 that we published. And so we've lost $2 million through piracy last year. And this is the biggest problem in all publishing. And I didn't agree with all their viewpoints. But I do think that within that, the more that I had to cover it and think about it, was that MP3s and all that really took off because of piracy. That was what really made those like launch, and that's maybe why at that point in time ebooks, which are bigger now than they were then, but even then, like because there wasn't a lot of piracy, it just seemed like not that important.
Exactly. Yeah. Can you imagine if like the last Harry Potter or something had gotten out and pirated? I mean, it would have been a huge fucking scandal.
It would have been massive. I mean, do you remember they took pictures? It was before ebooks. So there's a guy who took a picture of every single page and posted every single image to a website as a torrent file.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but no one wanted it because they're just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Read a image? Like on what? On my computer screen?
Print it all out?
Like I'm gonna print out 785 JPEGs? Like this is the least effective form of piracy ever. Basically like retyping it like a scribe.
That would have been more useful, honestly.
It would have been, to be honest. Yeah, absolutely. So there's another thing that came out of Frankfurt, though, as we run through all of the Frankfurt things, is a thing called Uplit, which okay. It debuted.
Just that tab, to be completely honest. I showed that Emma saw it open on my computer and she's like, what is this? And I explained it in like one sentence, which is, you know, literature that's optimistic instead of realistic. And she said, oh, I don't have any time for that. Fair enough.
Yeah, it says that the television producer Beth Morey's first novel, The Love Story of Missy Carmichael, has emerged as one of the biggest titles among a deluge of fiction following the trend for uplifting literature, or uplit. Selling to HarperCollins for a six-figure sum after a 10-way auction, the novel finds elderly Missy Carmichael living alone with her husband gone, her daughter not speaking to her, and her son in Australia, until she adopts a dog. I hate everything about this book immediately. Like, I loathe this book. And I know no more than that. But I also, uplit, come on, guys.
I mean, the whole thing is so craven. It's gross. It's just gross.
This is like one of those things that tries to create a trend so that some person somewhere can make a bunch of money off of it. They like cornered their market on uplit writers, and like if the Guardian and the New York Times says that this is a trend, all of a sudden like Random House would be like, come on, man, give us your uplit authors now.
Yep. That's what's going to happen.
That is stupid. I didn't read the end of this article because it was just not worth it.
But our listeners need to know what's going on in the international world of publishing.
They do.
Okay. We've been talking for quite a while.
53 minutes.
Let's spend some time. I'm just going to ask you, so ALTA's coming up, the
Right.
Tell me again what that stands for.
American Literary Translators Association.
Got it. Because there's an A at the beginning, at the end, I often confuse which one is which.
Oh, yeah.
It's also a city in Utah where people ski. So you're going, as you always do,
No,
because
I'm not. I will not
you're
be
not
there.
playing. You're no longer involved.
No, I am. But Kyle will be there, but I'm going from New York for the Words Without Borders Gala to Los Angeles for the Penn Gala, and that's the same time as ALTA. So I just have to miss it this year. But we will be hosting it in Rochester next year, November 6th through 8th or 7th through 9th. I forget. It's one of those dates, or 8th through 10th or something. November 2019 here in Rochester.
Cool. We will be there.
It'll be
Not because
fun.
I want to go to Alta, but because it's an excuse to go to Rochester.
Yeah, right on.
Anyway, so you've presumably seen some of the panels or been involved in planning them or
Yeah, sort of both. Sort of both.
Sort of both. Tell me what's on the minds of American literary translators this year. What's going to be the big news?
So I'm looking through this for what seems to me like the first time in my life. I do remember getting all these applications, but I do not remember any part of this. There's usually the thing that's become more. So this year, the keynote speaker is, I don't want to script her name. It's Caridad. Where are you? I'm gonna screw it up anyways. Caridad Svich, I believe, is a playwright. The whole conference this year is designed around drama and of like performance and plays and like tools that one uses for translation, both in terms of like making it drama, performing it, but also performance in terms of like dictionaries to like other aids or whatever. So that's the general framework, although that doesn't mean that all the panels fall under that particular rubric. However, the keynote speaker does. She's a playwright, and she's also, one of her plays will be performed. There's a staged reading of Deserts in partnership with the Indiana University Department of Theater, Drama, and Contemporary Dance. This is, just to make clear, it is taking place at Indiana University in Bloomington, which is cool, I guess. I don't know. I really hate the pants that the Hoosiers wear for their basketball warm-ups. So I have like that. I can't separate that from Indiana University and its existence in any way, which is on me, but it's a thing. So I was looking through the ones that are on here. There's been a lot of stuff recently about trying to do how to have a career and how to make money as a translator, how to like survive as a translator, and there are a few of those. But there's also like some of the normal things that people that show up every year, things like natural selection, what translation editors look for, a small press journal editors roundtable on publishing translations, author-translator relationships, teaching translation. That's one of the big ones. The ones that stood out to me, there's getting Basque and Catalan literature out there. That's fun. And ... punctuation, pacing, and parsing in poetry and prose, because I'm a sucker for using ellipses like as frequently as possible. But otherwise, it seems to be a little bit trending towards more about drama this year for intentional reasons, and also a little bit more academic than in the past. But that might be just a really quick bias of like looking through a lot of these. Like a lot of these titles have that academic vibe: authenticity versus performativity and translating for the stage. Part 1. Translation as performance, uncanny doubles between covers, things like that sound more, or this one, out of the wings, testing and advocating for translation and performance, things that are like seem more academic sounding. There is one on translating Carmen Biosa, which is interesting, and one on Us Too, Sexism and Sexual Harassment in the Translation Profession. But there's a number of interesting sounding panels. Like if I were going, some of the ones that stand out to me are like on translating nonsense, translating fragmented texts. Some of the ones I mentioned as well. Those are the main ones that come out immediately. But I think it's always fun. It's always as fun. Also, when you last came was when you came to Rochester, correct?
Correct.
Oh, that was 2011 or 2012. It's 2011 because the Cardinals won the World Series. Because they won that wild card game against Atlanta on that crazy infield hit rule that we saw at the party. If you remember at Writers and Books, she showed me the clip. So since that time, it's more than doubled in terms of attendance. There are over like around 500 translators who came last year when it was in Minneapolis. And this year they expected just as many. So it's a much larger event than it's ever been in the past, which allows for like more crowded panels, more discussion, but also for a lot of people to meet more mentors or to network. And that's very cool. It's still mostly translators and not as many publishing people, which is probably not ideal because of the potential for getting work, but it also is something that like might not change that fast because a lot of translators like to network with each other and to get value from that rather than necessarily trying to pitch something to publishers who aren't really paying that much close of attention. I mean, John Siciliano went last year and he takes everything very seriously and, listens to people's projects, but, he's only doing like a handful of books a year. So it's not going to change the world of publishing for translations if he goes to the conference or doesn't. But it is something that they tend to like talking to each other and like forming those bonds and getting information and finding people to help. And that's the good benefit of it. Plus it does have like semi-party atmosphere in terms of people hanging out and drinking and all of that. We usually, one of my favorite parts of ALTA has always been that I've challenged people to various competitions and said that if they could beat me, that we would publish their translation, like no questions asked. And no one's beaten me yet. So we need to find a good game for when it's here in Rochester so that we can we can promote it ahead of time and I can practice, but so that we can do that again. Cause that would be a good, that's what Open Letter sponsors. Open Letter sponsors a crazy ass competition. It was air hockey one year and no one could touch me. I was unstoppable.
Really?
Oh yeah. I was on fire that night. I'm usually not that great. I'm like pretty good, but I was just unhittable. Like no one could score. It was like locked in.
Because Emma and I and some friends, like 4 other friends, went to there's an arcade bar here, and I don't remember being particularly good at air hockey, but no one beat me in like 20 games or something. So
yep, that's what I was doing too. I was going to vote for darts for next year because there's a good couple locations where we can go play darts that would be feasible for such a thing. The one year it was through the basketball game at Salinger's I don't know if I took you guys there, but the little basketball shooting game.
Yeah,
I did that against like Will Vanderheiden and a bunch of people, and Will Vanderheiden, who is incredibly athletic and played like college hockey and is good at everything involving sports, crushed him over and over again. Crushed him.
we need to find something that like you physically are ill-equipped to be.
Dude, that's literally everything. That's basically everything we've said. Like, in what way would I be physically equipped to do any sport? Is there a sport where being really short and weak counts?
Gymnastics.
Oh, yeah, I'm fucking great at that. Like,
All right.
But yeah, I don't know what other, you guys aren't going to ALTA at all.
I mean, I wouldn't. Emma's the, like, full-time is not the right word, but more of a full-time translator than I am. That's
right.
for sure. I have too many other things going on to really spend much time doing it. Someday I hope to have much more time to translate, but no, but I do think she'll want to go next year. She wanted to go this year, but the store is, demanding still. Also, Bloomington, Indiana.
It's hard to get to.
Not the most fascinating destination, got to be honest.
No. They're always like, but we have a really good bagel shop.
Yeah, except we live on the coast. I don't know.
And really, it's not that good. Sorry, Bloomington. It's just got a lot of like cream cheese schmear options, but just having a lot of options doesn't qualify you as good. That's like saying like that like the Olive Garden is good at food, or better yet, the Cheesecake Factory is good at making food because they have 80 pages of their menu.
Right.
Man, I just threw some shit down on Bloomington. I apologize for that. I like Bloomington just fine. I don't care for those pants.
Pants are really ugly.
They're too much. Like, you shouldn't look like a clown before you go play basketball.
No, it's really not a very good, intimidating look.
It's like, look at us. We might put on an orange nose shortly. That honks.
I mean, they kind of look like the Harlem Globetrotters, which very athletic, but that's an entertainment team, not an actual competitive basketball team.
Right.
Anyway,
so do you have any books that you'd recommend or anything? I have 3.
No, honestly, I've been neck deep in. So I told you I'm going to Switzerland this week for the
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
a jury panel thing I'm on, which I'll explain everything after. But so I'm reading through a bunch of applications, from the people who applied for the writer slash translator residencies that this foundation offers. So
Yeah. That's always
I
fun.
would say it's far more interesting than I thought it would be.
Oh yeah.
I've never done this before, and even like projects that I know personally I would never read.
Yeah.
The way that people come at them and sort of present them as a thing to come about. Like I have not been an acquiring editor in so long, and even then I didn't do it for very long at Penguin. That like I forget what it's like to read just pitches, you know.
Yeah.
And I had it in my head that most of them were just garbage, and it's not true. Actually, they're pretty interesting, even if like the execution is like, oh no, you're not a very good writer. Like,
Right.
like people who find their ways to things like this tend to have some interesting ideas, even if they're not for me particularly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah,
Related to that, did you see the statistic that over 1 million books were self-published last year?
I did see that. I
That's
don't.
crazy.
It's funny. We had I can't remember where this was during NEBA. This probably wasn't a panel discussion so much as it was like me and some other bookstore owners, sorting through our different policies on whether or not we carry local authors, if they have to be on consignment and that sort of thing. And everyone sort of agreed that they will not carry anything that is published through Amazon,
Right.
just as a policy, and they only do it if they actually do live in the area. Because we get emails from people who live in like fucking Texas, right?
Oh yeah.
Because they're just blanket. It's like a blanket email, right? They may
Yeah.
have put my name in there, but it's the same email they sent to the bookstore across town. Anyway, that's a lot of books.
It's a lot of book. There's so Writers and Books is here in town and is designed to like help teach people how to become better writers. And the head of it, Kyle Semmel, is a good friend of mine, and he just resigned from Writers and Books, which because he's a quitter. And but like in the end, you start thinking like, do we need this? Like, I don't want to insult Writers and Books, but I just guess I did. But like, do we really need more people writing more books right now? And there's a million self-published books coming out in a given year.
It's a lot.
It's a
right?
lot, man. It's a lot. But I'm glad Writers and Books has people like Brian that help train people to be better at writing or think about writing. But whatever. Anyways, it's neither here nor there. I had three. So the TV show, I watched a TV show, which doesn't happen very often. But on Netflix, they had this show called Elite that's set in a Spanish, like I think it's outside of Madrid, but like a very fancy private school. And it's kind of it's a murder mystery. It's very involved. The murder happens at the very beginning and then sort of unpacks like how everything led to that moment and what actually happened over the course of the 8 episodes. And it's great. I really liked it. Also, I was like, oh, I thought my daughter would like this. And like, you should watch this show, blah, blah. And she didn't because she had her settings on like dubbing instead of subtitles and she couldn't deal with dubbing. Didn't understand that you could switch it. But then after a couple episodes, I was like, this is way too mature. Like I let my kids watch whatever they want, but like I might be making a mistake by letting her see what goes on here. There's a lot of stuff. But I thought it was pretty awesome. And then for books, I finished Öræfi The Wasteland by by Orfiger Sigurdsson. It's from Deep Vellum. It's part of the 5 articles I'm going to write about Deep Vellum this month, and that one's already online about like how many books Deep Vellum's published from different areas of the world, and like how many different authors and their breakdown of genders and various other stuff. And that book itself, but the book is cool because it's got kind of a Thomas Bernhard vibe to it, where it's like never-ending paragraphs of like people talking and having their own idiosyncratic way of telling a story. But it's all framed around this guy who goes to try and traverse the Öræfi area of Iceland in the southeast, big glacier and mountain area, and gets injured and gets bitten by a wild sheep and like crawls out like and has to be completely amputated. And then sort of goes back and tells like how he ended up there. But there's like a couple good twists in it, and it's the second Icelandic book I've read in a row, and both have interesting like geo or like eco climate sort of ideas behind them, along with some other interesting like narrative tricks. Schoen's book is also incredibly good, and that's the one I talked about last time. But then I also read, have you read the Taiga Syndrome Another book that has a lot of landscape imagery to it, but the Cristina Rivera Garza,
I haven't read it. Emma read it because she read the
Iliac Crest.
Iliac Press. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Taiga Syndrome, one day, like last week, I was like, I could just read this in a night. So I'm gonna, pour myself a whiskey and read this book straight. And I did, and it was very fun. It's like kind of an ex-detective sort of mystery of where this woman's trying to find this couple that fled, like this woman who fled her husband with another man, and they're out in like this remote part of Russia, and it's pretty cool. I like the style of it quite a bit. It's a very short book, like. It's a novel in like the loosest of terms, but it's rich and like fun to read. And Cristina Rivera Garza has a good tone. And she's one of these authors. I was thinking about this, but I think it's a topic for a different podcast. I was thinking about it in relation to Pessoa because we were reading the Book of Disquiet for the 2-month review. And the first half of this book I'm not into because it's like all the early stuff because they took the Book of Disquiet as it was and added on everything that he ever wrote that sort of related to it. And I don't know how much you're into this, but like the first author of the first half is a different person than the Book of Disquiet as you know it. Like the stuff that you know or have read in the past is not in the first half of the New Directions version. And this stuff is all sort of like, it's fine, it's good, but it's like clearly like he's sort of coming into figuring out the voice and what this book is going to be. And then at some point it's going to break out. And I feel like Cristina Rivera Garza is one of these authors that like broke out and went to another level. I was thinking for a bit right before we got on here about like what that means because it's a term that you use in baseball or in sports a lot, but particularly not through baseball. But where someone suddenly improves their entirety of their abilities. So some writer goes from like being okay to like being phenomenal, and I feel like Cristina Rivera Garza did that jump. And I don't know what that means or who else has done that or what books signify that, but it was just something that occurred to me of like when an author goes from like their juvenilia or their like early stuff to like being really good, like how does that look? How does that take place?
That's interesting because we often talk about reading books and it's like this feels very much like their first book, but that presumes that like their second book won't feel like that, and I feel like most often they do.
Yeah.
Like they don't actually change and evolve, right?
Right. But then there's some people who just all of a sudden it's just like boom. And I don't know if it's like the style that they learn how to write or they figure out structure or what they're figuring out. I'm sure people out there, again, experts know all of this, but like and have good opinions. But it just occurs to me that it does happen quite a bit with authors where they just suddenly find a new level.
Right. I mean, I'm trying to think. Like, I think it's interesting. Like Bolaño's career was short book, short book, short book, short book, and then 2 massive books.
Yeah.
Blew people away. And like, what happened in between?
Are those though? They could be argued because of how everything of his was written and is sort of published out of sequence a little bit too. Of like, what would have been the books that were not that well formed? Because those are long and broke out in terms of sales, but in breaking out in terms of the aesthetic, I don't know that they're not that much better than By Night in Chile. They're just different.
Think they're better. They're definitely more.
They're more assured.
Yes, and they definitely bring a lot more of the world into the books.
Did you get his new book, The New Galley?
I did get a galley of that. I'm going to read that soon, actually.
Oh, that's cool. We didn't get one, so we never get any of the cool galleys. We get like the prepper room.
I will see if I can get another one and pass it on.
That would be awesome. Anyways, so I don't have anything else to add, but if you like the podcast, you should rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter. I'm at Chad W. Post, and you are at the Tom Roberge. And we have the 2-month review continues on. We have the editor of the Portuguese edition that New Directions based their version on coming on the podcast Wednesday morning on YouTube version Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time to talk about, I don't know, the next up to page 94 essentially, and about like why he ordered the book in this way and what the process was like and all that kind of stuff. But that's also will be a podcast that's in its own feed, the 2-month review feed on Thursday morning, and appears in this feed sometime later over the weekend if I remember to do it right, which I generally don't. I don't have anything else to add, I don't think.
I should point out that I'm no longer on Twitter. So
you deleted your Twitter?
I deleted my Twitter.
I should delete my Twitter. I got in an argument with a NPR guy then locally on on Saturday about baseball. He called me. He's a little contentious.
Yeah. It's, you know,
It's a horrible place.
Yes, it is. I got rid of Instagram. I feel much better.
Yeah.
Marginally better about my days in general.
My favorite thing about it is just watching all my baseball friends, like or not friends, like the national writers and people that I follow that are like the smart, not the national writers, I guess, but like the smart ones with their running commentary on playoff games is entertaining to me.
That's fine. My Twitter feed was too full of depressing news and lame book shit. So.
I was gonna say I'm not a huge into the book stuff. Part of it. That's what I always retweet, but I don't really,
Right. Anyway.
Don't read.
I feel better. That's all
you should. It's an anxiety-making device.
It is. It really is.
It sucks. Cool. Well, you're not on Twitter, so don't follow Tom. You can follow Riff Raff.
You can.
Riff Raff PVD, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
The PVD, in case anyone is wondering, is how people abbreviate Providence.
Yeah. I figured that was evident, but you're
right. But I frequently have to give my email address to I don't know, random people on the phone, and they act like I've said the most confusing jumble of letters ever.
It's like a drug. Right.
PBT,
and they're like, whoa. I was just asking for your email, buddy. I didn't need that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so NBA starts tonight, and you've got new teams to root for, so that's cool too.
Yeah, not sure who, but
root for Philadelphia. I think I'm gonna.
No, I can't do that.
Really?
But everyone else is rooting for Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. I thought everyone was rooting for Boston.
Well, that too. But basically, everybody wants somebody other than the Warriors to win, which is a totally justifiable stance. But
yeah, and hopeless in the same way. Anyways, okay, I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right. See you later.